Admiral Elena Vance had seen terrible things in her life. She had seen cities burn. She had seen ships explode with thousands of people inside. She had seen friends die in her arms, but she had never seen anything like this. Crystalis Prime hung in space before her, and it was dying. The planet was beautiful, even now. Its surface was covered with structures made of living crystal, cities that sang with mathematical patterns, forests of glass that caught the light of their sun and turned it into rainbows. Those cities were being torn apart. The hegemony processing ships hung above the planet like giant insects. They had long arms that reached down to the surface, grabbing chunks of crystal and pulling them up. Inside those ships, the crystal was broken and melted and turned into something else. Elena knew what that something else was. Fuel. The hegemony ran their empire on the minds of other beings. They took living creatures and crushed their consciousness into energy cells. It was the most horrible thing in the galaxy. And it was happening to the Volanthi. "Admiral," her sensor officer said. His voice was shaking. "I'm detecting life signs on those processing ships." Volanthi life signs. Thousands of them. Are they alive? Yes, but... He stopped. He could not finish. But what? They're being processed. While alive, the hegemony doesn't kill them first. It's more efficient if they're conscious when... Stop. Elena's voice was sharp as a knife. I understand. She stood on the bridge of the Remembrance and looked at the 2,000 hegemony warships between her fleet and the planet. Her fleet had maybe 400 combat-capable vessels. The rest were cargo ships and transports and civilian craft that had no business being in a battle. It did not matter. "All ships," she said. "This is Admiral Vance. What you are seeing is the murder of an entire species. The Volanthi helped us when we needed help. They saved humanity when no one else would. Now they are being tortured and killed while the galaxy watches and does nothing." She paused. Across the fleet, humans listened. Soldiers and civilians, old and young, trained warriors and school teachers who had picked up weapons 3 weeks ago. Today, we do something. Today, we pay our debt. I will not lie to you. Most of us will not survive this, but the Volanthi will. Our friends will live because we chose to fight for them. Her hands gripped the railing of her command platform. "All ships, attack. No retreat. No surrender. Make them remember us." The human fleet charged. It was not a battle. Later, historians would try to find words for what it was. Some called it madness. Some called it glory. The Volanthi word that came closest translated to grief made fire. The hegemony fleet opened fire. Hundreds of weapons lit up the darkness. Human ships exploded. Human ships burned. Human ships died by the dozen, but the humans did not stop. Captain Yusuf Akonko flew the Lagos Ascending directly at a hegemony cruiser. His ship was falling apart. His engines were screaming. Half his crew was dead. "Captain," Amara said. She was bleeding from a wound on her head. "Our weapons are offline. We can't fight." "Yes, we can." Yusuf pushed the engines to full power. "We can still fly." "What are you?" "I'm sorry, Amara. I'm sorry for all of it. But I need you to get the crew to the escape pods. Now." "Yusuf." Now. She understood. She did not argue. She ran to save who she could. Yusuf watched the hegemony cruiser grow larger in his window. He thought about his home. He thought about his mother, who had died when he was young. He thought about the girl he had loved in school, who had married someone else. He thought about all the things he would never do. Then he thought about the Volanthi, crystal beings who had looked at humanity and seen something worth saving, who had risked everything to help strangers. "This is for you," he whispered. The Lagos Ascending hit the hegemony cruiser at full speed. The explosion was beautiful. Across the battle, similar scenes played out again and again. Human ships, outgunned and outmatched, chose to become weapons themselves. Cargo vessels loaded with fuel-rammed hegemony destroyers. Mining ships used their drilling lasers to cut enemy vessels in half. Passenger transports crashed into weapon platforms, sacrificing themselves to create openings for others. On the flagship of the hegemony fleet, Admiral XOR the Rendered watched with growing confusion. He had conquered 100 worlds. He had destroyed 1,000 species. He knew how war worked. This was not war. This was something else. "They keep coming," his officer said. "We destroy them, and they keep coming. Then destroy them faster. We are trying. But they don't stop. They don't run. They don't negotiate. They just attack." Dexler looked at his screens. The human fleet was smaller now, much smaller. But his own fleet was bleeding too. For every human ship that died, they were taking hegemony ships with them. He sent a message to the human fleet. "Primitive creatures, you are dying for nothing. The Volanti cannot be saved. Surrender now, and I will grant you quick deaths." A response came. It was not from Admiral Vance. It was from a small ship, a personal yacht that had no business being in battle. The voice was young, female, scared but determined. "My name is Sarah Chun. I'm 19 years old. I was studying biology before this. I wanted to discover new species of plants." Dexler did not understand why she was telling him this. "I'm going to die today. I know that. But before I die, I want you to know something." "What?" "The Volanti helped us once. They didn't have to. They got nothing for it. They just helped us because it was right. That's why we're here. That's why we won't stop. And that's why you're going to lose." A ship flew directly at Dexler's flagship. It was so small. It carried no weapons that could hurt him, but it carried something else. A cargo hold full of antimatter, stolen from a mining operation 3 weeks ago. The explosion tore through the flagship's shields. It ripped open the hull. It killed Dexler the Rendered and 3,000 of his crew. The hegemony fleet lost its commander. They lost their coordination. They lost their confidence, and the humans kept coming. On the Remembrance, Admiral Vance was dying. A piece of metal had gone through her chest. Blood filled her lungs, but she refused to leave the bridge. "Status," she whispered. "We've broken through their main line. Our ground forces are landing on the planet. The processing ships are being destroyed. The Volanti? Some are alive. We're saving them. We're actually saving them." Elena smiled. Blood ran down her chin. "Good. That's good." She closed her eyes. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about the promise she had made as a child. "I kept my word," she said. "I kept my word." She died with those words on her lips as the battle raged around her and humanity's fury burned across the stars. The vote was finished. 847 species had said no. Only 12 had said yes. The giant screen in the council chamber showed the final number, and then it went dark. Admiral Elena Vance sat in the human delegation's gallery, high above the council floor. She was 63 years old. Her hair was gray. Her hands were steady. She had fought in 3 wars and buried 2 children. Nothing surprised her anymore. But this surprised her. She looked down at the alien delegates leaving the chamber. They walked slowly, talking to each other in their different languages. Some of them looked sad. Most of them looked relieved. The vote was done. The matter was closed. The Volanti would die, and the universe would continue. Elena closed her eyes and remembered. She was 7 years old, sitting on her grandmother's knee. Her grandmother was very old then, with skin like paper and eyes that had seen too much. She was telling Elena a story, the same story she always told. "We were dying," her grandmother said. "The swarm was everywhere. Our ships were burning. Earth was next. Everyone knew it. We had maybe 3 days left. Little Elena had heard this story before, but she always listened. Her grandmother's voice was soft and sad and proud all at the same time. Then the signal came, from a ship we had never seen before. It was small and beautiful, made of something that looked like glass. They called themselves the Volanti. They said they had been watching us. They said they were curious about us. What did they want? Elena had asked, even though she knew the answer. Nothing. They wanted nothing. They just gave us the information we needed. The frequency that controlled the swarm. The weakness in their hive mind. They broke their own laws to help us. Their people punished them for it later. But they did it anyway. Why? Her grandmother had smiled. They said they wanted to see what we might become. Elena opened her eyes. The council chamber was almost empty now. A few cleaning machines moved across the floor. The lights were dimming. She stood up. Her aide, a young man named Thomas, looked at her with worried eyes. Admiral? The transport is waiting. Cancel it, ma'am. Cancel the transport. Get me a channel to Earth Command. Priority 1. Thomas did not move. Admiral, the vote is finished. The Concordat has decided. We cannot. I know what we cannot do. Elena's voice was quiet. Now I'm going to tell you what we will do. She walked out of the gallery and down the long corridor to the human embassy. Her boots made sharp sounds on the metal floor. Other aliens moved out of her way. They always did. Humans walk differently than other species. Faster, harder, like they were always angry about something. In the embassy, Elena stood in front of the communication screen. The face of General Marcus Cole appeared. He was old too, with a scar across his chin from a war that most people had forgotten. Elena, I watched the vote. Then, I know the Concordat said no. I know we have 17 ships in this sector. I know the hegemony of Ash has 2,000. I know something else. Elena leaned forward. In 2089, a ship called the Whisper of Equations broke every law their people had. They saved us. They asked for nothing. And now their world is burning. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Behind him, Elena could see other officers moving, listening. What are you asking me, Elena? I'm not asking. I'm telling. Send everything. Everything? Everything that flies. Everything that shoots. Everything that moves. Colony ships. Mining vessels. Cargo haulers. Generation ships. I don't care if it's held together with tape and prayers. Send it. Marcus rubbed his face with his hand. The Concordat voted to let our friends die. I don't care what the Concordat thinks anymore. This could mean war. With the hegemony. Maybe with the Concordat too. Elena smiled. It was not a nice smile. Good. The word hung in the air between them. Marcus looked at her for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. I'll make the calls. Don't call. Order. Tell them this is not a request. Tell them this is not a debate. Tell them what the Volanti did for us. And then tell them we're going to pay it back. The screen went dark. Elena stood alone in the embassy, looking out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, a world made of crystal was dying. Beings of living glass were being torn apart and turned into fuel. And the galaxy had decided it was not worth the trouble to stop it. She thought about her grandmother again. The old woman had died when Elena was 12. But before she died, she had made Elena promise something. Remember them, she had said. Remember the ones who helped us when no one else would. And if they ever need us, you go. You go. And you don't stop until you've done what needs to be done. Elena had promised. She had been a child then, and the promise had seemed easy. Now she was old, and the promise was heavy. But she would keep it. Within hours, the messages went out. They traveled across human space at the speed of light and faster. They reached colony worlds and space stations and ships floating in the dark between stars. The message was simple. It told the story of the whisper of equations. It told what the Volanthi had done. It told what was happening to them now. And it ended with 3 words. We remember. Come dot, and humanity came. On distant colonies, people stopped their work and looked up at the sky. Old soldiers took their uniforms out of storage. Young people who had never seen war walked to recruitment centers. Ships that had not moved in decades began to warm their engines. The Concordat ambassadors watched with confusion and growing fear. They sent messages asking what was happening. They sent demands to stop. They sent threats. The humans did not answer. They were too busy. On the bridge of her flagship, the Remembrance, Elena watched the reports come in. Ships were launching from every human world. Some of them were warships. Most of them were not. Cargo vessels, passenger transports, mining rigs, anything that could fly dot. It was not an army. It was something else. Something the galaxy had never seen before. Her first officer, a woman named Sarah, stood beside her. Admiral, command wants to know our orders. Elena looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Volanthi were dying. Somewhere out there, a debt was waiting to be paid. Tell them to point their ships toward Crystalis Prime. Tell them to fly as fast as they can. And tell them this. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was made of iron. They helped us once. Now we help them. No matter the cost. Captain Yusuf Okonkwo had never been a soldier. He was a cargo hauler. For 20 years, he had moved boxes from one place to another. Food, machine parts, medical supplies, boring things, safe things. His ship, the Ligas Ascending, was old and tired. The hull had patches on top of patches. The engine made sounds that no engine should make. The life support systems worked most of the time. Now the Lagos Ascending carried 4,000 volunteers and enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Yusuf stood on his bridge and looked at the people around him. His crew was not trained for war. His pilot was a woman who had flown passenger shuttles. His engineer was a teenager who had learned to fix things by watching videos. His weapons officer had been a cook 3 days ago. Captain, his first officer said. Her name was Amara, and she had been a school teacher before all this started. We're getting more ships on the sensors. How many? I stopped counting at 600. Yusuf walked to the window and looked out. The view made him want to laugh and cry at the same time. Ships. Everywhere. Ships of every size and shape. He could see colony transports as big as cities, their huge engines glowing blue. He could see mining vessels with drilling lasers strapped to their hulls. He could see personal yachts and family cruisers and science ships and medical frigates. None of them were military. All of them were going to war. This is insane, Amara said softly. Yes, we're going to die. Probably. Then why are we doing this? Yusuf turned to look at her. She was scared. They were all scared. But they were here anyway. Because someone helped us once, he said. And we don't forget. The fleet moved through space like a river of light. 17 days to reach Volanthi space. 17 days through territory that belonged to the hegemony of Ash. On the 3rd day, the hegemony sent scouts. 3 fast ships appeared on the sensors. They were sleek and deadly, built for hunting. They moved toward the human fleet with confidence. They had done this many times before. They knew how to scare weaker species. The human fleet did not stop. It did not slow down. It did not turn. The scout ships came closer. They sent a message in the standard galactic language. Unidentified vessels. You are entering hegemony space. State your purpose or be destroyed. Admiral Vance's voice came through every speaker in the fleet. She sounded calm. She sounded tired. She sounded absolutely certain. This is Admiral Elena Vance of the human fleet. Our purpose is simple. We are going to Crystalis Prime. We are going to save our friends. If you stand in our way, we will destroy you. If you run, we will let you go. You have 1 minute to decide. The scouts did not believe her. Why would they? They saw cargo ships and passenger vessels. They saw a fleet of junk held together with hope and metal wire. They saw no threat. They attacked. The first scout ship fired at a colony transport. The shot hit the transport shields and did nothing. Before the scout could fire again, 17 human ships turned their weapons on it. Lasers and missiles and mining beams and things that had never been weapons before. The scout exploded in a ball of fire. The other 2 scouts ran. They were fast, but human missiles were faster. One of them escaped. One of them did not. On the bridge of the Lagos Ascending, Yusuf watched the battle end. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding. But he was smiling. First blood, Amara said. First of many. The fleet continued forward. More scouts came. More scouts died or ran. The hegemony began to understand that something strange was happening. These were not normal enemies. These were not people who could be scared or threatened or bought. These were humans. And they were angry. On the 10th day, something happened that made the whole galaxy pay attention. USA, hegemony patrol fleet of 50 warships, moved to block the human fleet. They were real warships this time, with real weapons and real soldiers. Their commander, a creature called Vexinar the Cruel, sent a message to the humans. Foolish creatures. You cannot win. Surrender now, and some of you will be allowed to live as slaves. Fight and all of you will die. The humans did not surrender. The battle lasted 3 hours. The human fleet lost 87 ships. 11,000 humans died. But when it was over, Vexinar was dead, and 43 of his 50 ships were burning in the void. The 7 surviving hegemony ships ran. They ran faster than they had ever run before. And as they ran, they sent messages to the hegemony high command. They will not stop. They cannot be stopped. They do not care about dying. They just keep coming. Across the galaxy, other species watched. The news spread from world to world, from station to station. A human fleet was moving through hegemony space. They were losing ships every day. They were dying by the thousands. And they would not stop. On the bridge of the Lagos Ascending, Yusuf received a message from Admiral Vance. Her face was tired, and there was blood on her uniform. But her eyes were still sharp. Captain Okonkwo, the Lagos Ascending has performed well. I'm promoting you to squadron leader. Yusuf laughed. Squadron leader? My ship is held together with emergency welds and prayers. So is most of the fleet. That's why we're winning. We're winning? Vance smiled. It was a strange smile, sad and proud and fierce all at once. We're still alive. We're still moving forward. And they're learning to fear us. Yes, Captain. We're winning. The fleet flew on through the dark between stars. Every day, more ships joined. Some came from human colonies that had received the message late. Some came from other places. On the 14th day, 3 Kethvari hive ships appeared on the sensors. The Kethvari had been humanity's enemies once. They had nearly destroyed Earth. Now they sent a simple message. That is understood. We come. Yusuf stared at the message for a long time. Then he laughed until tears ran down his face. Captain? Amara asked. Are you all right? I'm fine. He wiped his eyes. I just realized something. What? We're not alone. We never were. We just forgot for a while. 3 days later, the fleet arrived at Crystalis Prime. What they saw there made them stop laughing. What they saw there made some of them scream. The world was burning. The beautiful crystal cities were being torn apart. And in orbit, 2,000 hegemony ships waited for them. Yusuf looked at the enemy fleet. He looked at his own ship, held together with tape and courage. He looked at his crew, teachers and cooks and engineers who had become soldiers. "Well," he said, "let's go save our friends." The Lagos Ascending flew forward into the fire. Across the galaxy, they watched Dot in council chambers and throne rooms, on space stations and colony worlds, in ships floating in the dark between stars. Beings of every shape and size watched the Battle of Crystalis Prime. They watched humans die. Ambassador Kexthal of the Morthani Collective sat in his office on the Concordat capital station. He was an old creature with gray scales and tired eyes. He had been a diplomat for 200 years. He had seen many things. He had never seen anything like this. On his screen, a human cargo ship flew directly into a hegemony battleship. The cargo ship was small. The battleship was enormous. The cargo ship exploded on impact, and the battleship broke in half. "They're insane," his aide said. "They're throwing their lives away." "No," Kexthal's voice was quiet. "They're spending their lives. There's a difference." "What difference?" "When you throw something away, you get nothing for it. When you spend something, you buy something with it." He pointed at the screen. "They're buying time. They're buying lives. They're buying the survival of the Volanthi." His aide shook his head. "It's still madness. The Volanthi are not even their allies. They have no treaty, no agreement, no obligation. They have something else." Kexthal turned to look at his aide. "They have a debt. The Volanthi helped them once, 50 years ago, and now they're paying it back. With their lives? With their entire fleet? For a debt that old?" "Yes." The aide was silent for a long moment. "We would never do that. No, we would not. That is the difference between us and them. On 1,000 worlds, similar conversations happened. Species that had dismissed humans as primitive and emotional now watched in silence. They saw human ships, some no larger than personal shuttles, flying directly into enemy fire. They saw death tolls climbing into the hundreds of thousands. They saw humans dying for someone else. On the Kethvari homeworld, the Hive Queen watched through the eyes of her 3 fleets at Crystalis Prime. The Kethvari had been humanity's enemies once. 60 years ago, they had tried to consume Earth. They had nearly succeeded. The humans had beaten them. And then, instead of destroying them, the humans had offered peace. The Kethvari had not understood this. They still did not understand many things about humans, but they understood that. "The humans saved us when they could have killed us," the Hive Queen said to her council. "They showed us mercy we did not deserve. Now they fight for the Volanthi, who showed them mercy long ago. What shall we do?" Her council asked. "We shall help. Debt must be paid." The 3 Kethvari hive fleets moved into battle alongside the humans. They did not ask for orders. They did not wait for permission. They simply fought. It was enough. But it was not only the Kethvari. As the battle continued, other ships began to appear. A small fleet from the Nexari, a trading species that had never fought a war. A single giant vessel from the Thrum, ancient beings who had not left their homeworld in 10,000 years. Ships from species that had no reason to help, no obligation to fight, no stake in the outcome. They came anyway. On the surface of Crystalis Prime, the war took a different form. Human soldiers landed in dropships, fighting their way through hegemony troops to reach the surviving Volanthi. Sergeant Priya Sharma led her squad through the ruins of a crystal city. The buildings around her had been beautiful once, towers of living glass that sang in the wind. Now they were broken and dark. "Movement ahead," her scanner operator said. Priya raised her weapon. Her squad spread out, Taking cover behind fallen crystal columns, a figure emerged from the ruins. It was tall and thin, made entirely of transparent crystal. Light moved through its body like blood through veins. It was beautiful and strange, and obviously terrified. A Volanthe. Alive. Priya lowered her weapon. "It's okay. We're here to help. We're human." The Volanthe made a sound like glass bells ringing. It did not understand her language, but it understood her tone. It understood that she was not a threat. More Volanthe emerged from hiding. A dozen, then 2 dozen, then more. They had been hiding in the ruins, waiting for death. Instead, they found humans. "Get them to the evac point," Priya ordered. "Protect them with your lives." "Sergeant," one of her soldiers said, "there's too many of them. Our ship can't carry them all. Then we carry as many as we can. And we come back for the rest." The soldier hesitated. "The hegemony has troops between us and the evac point. We'll have to fight through them. Then we fight." They fought. The journey to the evac point took 6 hours. Priya lost half her squad. Martinez was killed by enemy fire. Chun died covering the retreat. Young Thompson, who had just turned 19, was cut down protecting a group of Volanthe children. But the Volanthe survived. When they finally reached the evac point, there were human ships waiting. Medical ships. Transport ships. Ships that had once carried cargo and now carried survivors. The Volanthe boarded the ships. As they left, one of them turned back to look at Priya. It made the bell sound again, and this time her translator caught the meaning. "Why? Why do you do this?" Priya was exhausted. She had been awake for 2 days. Her armor was covered in blood, some of it hers. Everyone in her original squad was dead. "You helped us once," she said. "Did you think we forgot?" The Volanthe looked at her for a long moment. Then it made another sound. Her translator said it meant gratitude beyond words. The ship doors closed. The ship flew up through the smoke and fire toward safety. Priya watched it go. Then she picked up her weapon and turned back toward the ruins. "Sergeant?" One of her remaining soldiers asked. "Where are you going?" "Back. There are more of them out there. More to save. We don't have enough people. We don't have enough ammunition. I know." Priya started walking. "But they're still out there. And we're still here. So we keep going." She walked back into the ruins. Her soldiers followed her dot above them. The battle in space was reaching its peak. The human fleet was bleeding, dying ship by ship. But the hegemony fleet was dying too, and dying faster dot and across the galaxy. Watching from 1,000,000 screens on 1,000,000 worlds. The other species began to understand something they had never understood before. Humans were not powerful. They were not wise. They were not ancient or advanced or special. But they would die for their friends. Without hesitation. Without calculation. Without counting the cost out, and that made them dangerous in a way that no other species had ever been dangerous before. The Concordat began the fracture. Species that had voted against helping the Volanthe now sent ships to join the battle. Not because they thought humanity could win. Not because they wanted to share in victory. Because they were ashamed. Because they had watched humans do what they themselves had refused to do. Because they wanted to prove that they too could be more than their fear. The universe was changing. And humanity was the reason. The battle lasted 11 days. When it was over, the human fleet was a shadow of what it had been. Of the thousands of ships that had come to Chrysalis Prime, only a few hundred remained. The rest were debris. Floating in the darkness around the crystal world. 2,847,203 humans had died, but the Volanthe were alive. The hegemony fleet was gone. Every last ship destroyed, captured, or fled. The processing ships had been torn apart, their prisoners freed. The hegemony troops on the planet had surrendered or died. It was over. Sergeant Priya Sharma stood on the surface of Chrysalis Prime and watched the sunrise. She had not slept in days. Her uniform was torn and stained. She had run out of ammunition 2 days ago and had been fighting with a knife in her bare hand since then. She was the last one. The last of her squad. The last of her company. Everyone else was dead. Around her, human soldiers were helping Volanti survivors emerge from the ruins. Medical teams were treating the wounded. Engineers were setting up shelters and water purification systems. A Volanti approached her. It was an elder, its crystal body darker and more complex than the younger ones. It moved slowly, carefully, like something that had been hurt very badly and was still healing. It made the bell sound. And Priya's translator spoke. "You are one of the soldiers." "Yes, you fought for us." "Your people died for us." "Yes." The elder was silent for a moment. Light moved through its body, patterns that Priya did not understand. "Why?" Priya laughed. It was a strange sound, tired and sad, and somehow happy at the same time. Tears ran down her face. "You helped us once. A long time ago, before I was born. A ship called the Whisper of Equations. They broke your laws to save us. They asked for nothing in return. They just helped us because they could." The elder made a soft sound. "I remember. I was young then. I asked the crew of that ship why they did it. They said they wanted to see what you might become." Priya wiped her eyes. "And what did we become?" The elder looked at her. Then it looked at the humans around her, the soldiers and doctors and engineers who had crossed the galaxy to save strangers. "You became the species that remembers," it said. "You became the species that pays its debts. You became something the galaxy has never seen before." "What's that?" "Friends." The word hung in the air between them. Such a simple word. Such a small word. But it meant everything. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed. The Concordat dissolved. 847 species had voted to let the Volanti die, and now they could not look at each other without shame. The old alliance fell apart, and something new took its place. They called it the Compact of Memory. It was not built on trade agreements or military treaties. It was built on a simple promise. When your friends need help, you help them. No calculations. No cost-benefit analysis. You just help. Humanity did not lead the compact. They did not want to. They were too busy burying their dead. On Earth, they built a wall. A simple wall of black stone, stretching for kilometers. On it, they carved the names of everyone who had died at Chrysalis Prime. It took 3 years to finish. When people walked along it, they could not see where it began or ended. On Chrysalis Prime, the Volanti built something else. In the center of their rebuilt capital, they created a monument. It was made of their own crystal, the most precious material they had. It showed a human hand, crude and soft and strange, cradling a small Volanti child. The inscription was in both languages. In English, it read, "We remember those who helped. We remember those who came. The debt was never ours to repay, only to honor." And below, in smaller letters, the names of every human who had died. People came from across the galaxy to see the monument. Other species, curious about the humans who had done this impossible thing, they stood before the crystal sculpture and read the names. 2,847,203 names. Many of them cried. Sergeant Priya Sharma never went back to Earth. She stayed on Chrysalis Prime, helping with the rebuilding. The Volanti offered her a place among them, and she accepted. She learned their language, their music, their mathematics of light. Sometimes, young Volanti would come to her with questions. They wanted to understand humans. They wanted to know why the humans had come. Priya always told them the same story. The story of the whisper of equations. The story of a debt that was not forgotten. But we asked for nothing, the young ones would say. We expected nothing. Why did they come? Because that's who they are, Priya would answer. Humans remember. Humans care. Even when it cost them everything. The young ones would think about this. They would look at the monument, at the hand cradling the child. Will other species do this too? They would ask. Will others come when someone needs help? Priya would smile. That's the secret, she would say. That's why we did it. Not just to save you, but to show the universe that it's possible. That beings can choose to help each other. That the galaxy doesn't have to be cold and empty and cruel. And will it work? I don't know. But we have to try. We have to believe that kindness matters. That debt matters. That friendship matters. Because if we don't believe that, then what's the point of anything? The young Volanti would leave with new thoughts in their crystal minds. And slowly, generation by generation, the idea would spread. The universe was changing. It was changing because humans had showed up when no one expected them to. Because they had died for strangers. Because they had remembered a kindness done long ago and paid it back with everything they had. The galaxy was not fixed. There was still cruelty and war and suffering. There were still empires like the hegemony, still species that cared only for themselves. But there was also something else now. A memory, a story, a legend that spread from world to world. Once, a species of crystal beings helped humanity in their darkest hour. They asked for nothing in return. And when those crystal beings faced destruction, humanity came. They came with everything they had. They came knowing they would die. They came because a debt was owed. They helped once. And humanity never forgot. In the end, that was the gift humanity gave the galaxy. Not power, not technology, not wisdom. Just this, the knowledge that someone, somewhere, would remember. The promise that kindness would be repaid. The proof that the universe could be better than it was. The Volanti were alive. Humanity had paid its debt, and the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, as if even the universe was grateful for what had been done.